Please note that the discussion points we cover in this podcast are our own views or those of the guest speakers and do not constitute as financial advice. We always recommend that you speak with a professional before considering your own situation and taking action.
Welcome to On Her Terms, where money meets real life, family, careers, and everything in between. I'm Jodie Phelps.
I'm Yasmin Barlow-Mills.
Today's all about how to financially prepare for separation. I specialise in helping clients through their divorce and have also got lived experience as I've been through my own divorce. Hopefully the episode will help anyone who's about to go through divorce, thinking about going through divorce, or mid-separation.
And we're also joined by a lovely guest, Rebecca from Stowe Family Law. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I've been at Stowe for 4 years and I help people when their relationship breaks down. So whether it be about the finances or the children, they come to me at probably one of the worst times of their lives, and I try and help them reach a resolution. And then in terms of sort of who I am human-wise rather than lawyer-wise, I live in London and I love to travel, the sun, obsessed with tanning, and my favourite place is on a beach with an ice cream.
Oh, I'll join you there.
Yeah, so relatable.
Divorce can be so overwhelming, and a big issue is always money. But there's so many other elements to it as well. Obviously, like you mentioned, there's kind of the child element. A lot of time with a lot of people I work with, also it's the confidence. So we'll kind of cover that as well, and the fear and everything in between. But before we start today's episode, we're going to do our usual feature of wins and wobbles. So Yaz, what's your wins and wobbles for today's episode?
So my win is a bank holiday weekend. I survived my hen do, I would say. I was quite nervous, but it was actually really nice to be away. We went to Bath, quite tame for a hen do, but yeah, it was really lovely. And you don't often get like that many people together, all your favourite people in one place. So I thought that was my win. Came back in one piece. The wobble would be that I actually got stung by a bee on my hen do the last day. Came back, thought everything's fine, swelling had gone down. And then yesterday I had to go to the doctors because it turns out it's now infected and I'm on a lovely course of antibiotics.
Oh.
So that's my wobble for the week.
So just about survived the hen.
About survived. Yours?
So my win is that, like many mid-30s people, I have a new hobby, high rocks, and I competed in my first competition. So that was exciting. Me and my sister did it together. My wobble, and this one's almost a bit embarrassing, and I don't know how it will make me come across because it's actually quite stupid. But during the race, like you do these like kilometre runs, and there was a man walking around with like this, like almost like a pole with a red light on it. And I thought it was like infrared to like help like muscle healing. And, so every time I passed him, I kept trying to get like near the infrared light.
Just holding your hands up. Woo!
And then at the end of when we finished, my sister was like, what were you doing? Why did you keep trying to high five the like red light man? And I was like, I was just trying to get the infrared, but turns out it's to stop people going in the fast lane when they shouldn't be running in the fast lane. And she was like, you were really getting in people's way, like the fast people. So yeah, that's my wobble. How about you?
My win this morning was being able to come here without getting on a tube or in an Uber. So I walked here. Didn't get too wet, luckily, missed the rain. And then my wobble was putting my house keys in my coat pocket and putting it in the washing machine. Luckily, I didn't break the washing machine, so it was all turned out okay. But bit of a panic last night and this morning. So no, all sorted today.
That is a classic, though. I've done that many a time, or like cards and stuff. Yeah, that's a classic.
And then now I've got like a 12-year-old as well. I'm like things he has in his pockets. Like he had bus passes and I like managed to wash them and they're like paper ones. So yeah, not ideal.
Okay, shall we dive in?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess this is quite a big question actually, and probably one that we both get a lot. It'd be interesting to get both takes on it. But I always get people asking, and you do as probably as well, Jodie, is what's the first thing you'd tell someone facing separation? Quite a big question, but it comes up a lot.
I think the first thing I would say is like breathe, don't panic, don't rush. I think so many people make decisions based on emotions. So they're feeling, angry or they're feeling guilty, and they try to rush before they have detail of the situation. So I think just breathe and baby steps. I think going through a separation is so overwhelming. It's such a big thing to go through. And I think I always say to my clients, I'm like, if at the beginning you think about everything that needs to be done, if you haven't yet gone through the separation, it could put you off separating. But if you are at the beginning of it, it can make you feel really anxious and down. So actually instead, just think of little bite-sized chunks. So just think of, almost give yourself like a job a week. One little thing each week that you want to get done. Because then, suddenly a few months' time, you've actually come a long way. But yeah, I think the main thing I'd say is breathe, don't panic, don't make any decisions through emotion. Just take time to take a step back and look at the overall position.
It's such an overwhelming thing to even begin to fathom. And I think the starting place is probably like the bit that scares people the most.
I couldn't agree more, Jodie. I think it can feel a bit of a mountain. And I think if you are at the beginning of it, you look up on this mountain and you think, I'm never going to get over that. How am I going to do that? There's too much to do, too much to think about. Where do I even start? But it really is that case of baby, small steps, one day at a time. And then you will look back in, a matter of months or maybe in a year or so and look back and actually turn around and think, gosh, look how far I've come. So it's really important, as you said, Jodie, just to keep breathing and take a breath and make sure that you don't rush into decisions and don't base your decisions on emotions, which come and go. And it must really be thought out. And there are ways that we can help you in thinking about things that aren't sort of emotion-led.
Yeah, and you don't have to go through it on your own. I think I say to anyone, if you've got like a strong support network, be it friends, family, a good solicitor, a financial advisor, like you don't have to have all the answers yourself. I remember when I was in my marriage, when I knew it wasn't a relationship I wanted to be in, and I remember somebody said to me who'd been through their own divorce, they said, if you know like deep in your heart, like you really don't want to be in this, you need to like finish it and then like just see what happens. Because if you sit there and think about all the things that could possibly go wrong and worry about everything, you could then like, you're probably not going to do it. And to be honest, when I look back, I was like, if I knew the couple of years that followed, it probably would have put me off. Yeah. But like, I don't regret it. Do you know what I mean? So because you are stronger than you think you are, and you can tackle each little bit at a time. And as long as you've got a strong support network, then you're okay. But the common mistakes I see people make early on, be good to get your take on it, are moving out immediately or making like house decisions immediately. Again, like making agreements, especially if someone feels guilty, if they're the one like leaving, early on trying to like give too much financially because they feel guilty and not thinking about their future. And then the third one is listening to other people's stories. I think so many people say, oh, so-and-so went John down the road went through the same and he had to give all of his money to so-and-so. Like, it's like listening to other people's stories because every divorce is so unique. And I'm sure you can kind of agree in a second, but like it's not black and white. Yeah. It's a grey area. And actually, yeah, every situation is unique. And just because John down the road did something, that's not going to be the same for you. Yeah. But what mistakes would you say you see people make?
You've hit the nail on the head with all of those. I think, moving out of the home too quickly is the biggest one. Because once you're out, it can be quite difficult to go back in again. So you must bear that in mind. It's not always the best thing to do is just to rush out. I mean, unless you're worried about your safety. But if you're not, rushing out of the house is not necessarily the best thing to do. Once you're out, it can be difficult to come back in again. And I think feeling guilty or sorry or angry is a bad start. It's entirely natural to feel all of those things, but to start making decisions based on those is one of the worst things that you can do. So I think those are the biggest mistakes we see, rushing out of the house and making big decisions based on those emotions.
Yeah. And you touched on it there. It'd be interesting to get your take on if someone is in like an abusive relationship. Because they say if anyone's listening today and they actually are in danger or feel like they're in danger in an abusive relationship, what would be your kind of first?
So it's really important to consult a solicitor as soon as you can. And if you are very much thinking that your safety or your children's safety or you are in danger or at risk, then it is important to leave the property if the risk feels immediate. The other thing I would say is the police are always there on hand. So if you feel like you're in immediate danger, the police are the first port of call. And then it's coming to see a solicitor and we can talk you through your options, because there are various orders and applications to court that we can make to help you make sure that your housing need is met. If you feel like it's the right thing to do and vacate the property, then there are options. And there are also options of getting the abusive partner to leave the property instead of you. So it's important that you speak to a solicitor who can talk you through those options and how the process works.
Okay, so to round it up, if you are not in danger, if you are, not in an abusive relationship, not in danger, stay in the house, don't rush decisions. But if you are, then obviously don't stay in the property at your own expense. And just to round up the other bits, really just information first, decision second. Like, don't make any irrational decisions.
And I think Jodie, just to come back to your point when you say every divorce is different, that couldn't be truer. We're in a very human industry, and it's a very human matter going through a divorce. And every relationship is different, and every marriage is different, and people have different assets, and people have different amounts of money and different incomes. So comparing yourself to John down the road is not the right way forward, because John down the road,
shout out to John down the road, no,
had a different relationship to you, and different asset base and different circumstances. And the court very much take into account the circumstances of the marriage, the circumstances of the relationship, and the circumstances of the assets. And so comparing yourself to John is what John got or gets in his divorce is not going to be the same as you.
Yeah. And I think the other misconception is that there is a black and white answer. Like, I get so many people saying, my partner inherited some money 2 years ago. Does that have to go in the divorce? And the thing is, it's not a black and white answer. So there's never and it can be the fact that their partner is telling them, like, that's my money because of that. And then it's so easy for the other partner to believe everything they're being told by the partner. But I think seeking your own independent advice is so important than just listening to what the other party that you're divorcing is telling you.
Because knowledge is key. And, family law is entirely discretionary. So there isn't a black and white answer. As I say, each case is entirely different. So we often go to court, and what we think a judge might say might not be what a judge says. And what one judge might say on one day is different to what another judge might say on another day on the same set of facts. So there is really no black and white. We have guiding principles and case law, but ultimately it is discretionary, and there isn't a black and white answer.
Easier if there was.
It would be a lot easier if there was.
Didn't have as much work. Yas, you were saying on the way up here, we were talking about clients that we've both looked after, but we've both seen a few recently who are planning a divorce, but their other partner does not yet know. I don't know if you want to share a bit about that.
Yeah, so I had a lady come in, and it's the first thing she said was, am I going to be okay? And we probably both hear that a lot. So you're there to offer reassurance, a bit of validation, kind of guide through the process. But yeah, she was in a situation where she'd been thinking about it for a long time, but they've got children and she was really conscious about them. I think we see a lot of people who have maybe been in a relationship for a long time and have wanted to leave, but the guilt comes in, like that's a massive thing. So she was that was her situation, and she had no idea about the financials. I think the idea of leaving was really daunting. She didn't know if she could do it on her own. So we just started from scratch, really, and it was gathering all the information, which kind of leads on to my next question in a minute. But we actually had to get an estate agent in, kind of done on the down low, so that we could just start preparing things financially and just giving her a bit of confidence, because I think that's what a lot of people need. It's just the confidence to make decisions. But yeah, I think, when we were talking, something we see a lot. And I guess I wonder whether you have that, whether people come to you before the divorce has actually been initiated and they're just kind of seeking advice.
We see that a lot, and that's no bad thing. I mean, I think, I say that knowledge is key. I think before you start making these decisions, you must, you should get an understanding of the process and of the law. And so I think if you are thinking of separating, seeking provisional initial advice from a solicitor is really important. And we would say the same as you. You will be okay. It is going to be okay. And this is the process, and this is what might happen, and this is how much it could cost you. And giving that initial kind of confidence and confirmation to our clients that things will be okay and that we are there to support them and there is a process to these things is really important. And lots of our clients go away, feeling that sort of first sense of confidence, with that bit of knowledge that we have provided them, and they can go away and make decisions based on, what we've sort of said initially.
Yeah, and I was going to say that kind of leads on to the next bit anyway, doesn't it? Like what information is needed, I guess. So that's what people will come to us for and say, what do I need? What should I know? How do I prepare? So I don't know, Jodie, if you've got kind of experience with that.
And I think a lot of clients I see are in a relationship, I usually find that one person will control the finances and the other doesn't. It's quite rare that both people have a real kind of hands-on management of the money. And often I do see, women or sometimes men come in and they aren't the ones who have any knowledge of the money. So not only is this person, they could have just been told they're being left, or they could be made the decision to leave or considering it. But actually then thinking about the finances is even more daunting because they've, for 10, 20 years or however how long, they've not had any say in anything and not had to worry other than just spending money. But the information I'd say for anybody in that position, any of those positions, is gather your kind of information on pensions, pension statements, savings, any information you have on what savings you have, debts, so credit cards, loans, mortgages, assets. So like Yas said, like get an idea of how much your family home costs, the price of your family home, any rental properties, any other assets there may be, income. So understand your own, what income you have coming in every month and what income your partner has coming in. Outgoings, which is a lot of time is taken on sorting out the outgoings. And it's what's quite difficult is actually thinking about what outgoings you're going to have when you leave, because it may be that whilst you're in this marriage, you've got, a 4-bedroom house with, 4 of you living there. But actually when you then separate, it's just going to be a 2-bedroom flat or something. And I think the other thing I see as well is people thinking that their life is going to remain the same. But when you're going to go from 2 incomes to 1, there are going to be some changes. And I think that's quite a lot to stomach. It's actually knowing that actually, a lot will be better because you're not in this relationship anymore. You have this newfound freedom, you're happier. However, life is going to be a little bit different for both of you. But yeah, I think you can't negotiate. You can't think of negotiating unless you understand what is in place. So I'd say first step financially would be, mortgage statements, any debts, any assets, what your incomes are and what your current outgoings are.
And I think to add to that, what we advise is before we can start negotiating is we do need a level of financial disclosure. And there's a document called a Form E that the parties need to complete and exchange. And that Form E shows the financial landscape of each party. So we would need that in order to help our clients negotiate an outcome. And part of that Form E process is looking at mortgage statements, it's looking at bank statements, it's looking at pay slips. It's going through the bank statements and working out how much you spend on food, how much you spend on electricity. I think there's a we all get so used to getting bank statements and, never looking through my bank statements. And, you don't know how much you spend per month. So I think it's taking that time to look through those kind of things, work out how much the electricity bill is, work out how much your mortgage is and what you think you'll need going forwards. And there's a section at the end of the Form E where it's called a schedule of expenditure. And you have to list what you spend now and what you will spend post-separation. And I think that takes time to think about. And you can, speak to financial advisors about that. And there's 2 separate columns. And it's about sort of going through your finances and working out what you spend now. But if it's, if you're going from a, two parties to one party, then there's going to be adjustments to be made. And we can help you with that. And a financial advisor can help you work out what kind of adjustments will need to be made.
And it's really important as well to think about actually when you're on your own, any benefits you could be entitled to or like discounts. So for example, council tax, you'll get a 25% discount for being the only adult in the property. You can go on and see what child maintenance you could be entitled to, depending on how often you're having the children. And also there are some like websites, I think one's called like Entitled To, where you can actually go on and put your situation and your income, and it'll show you what, if there's any kind of like universal credits or anything that you can be entitled to. So a lot of times I see people, like you said earlier, Yas, where they come in and think, will I be okay? But they're only thinking about their current income. But actually, once situations change, there will be more income. And I think a lot of the time, once they've had a look into that, they feel a lot more assured. And I've had quite a few clients actually, they're better off once they're separated, with the income that they will then have.
Mm-hmm. And there are lots of things online, talking about child maintenance. There is a child maintenance calculator online where you can input your income or your partner's income and work out how much you might be in receipt of, depending on how often you will or will not have the children. So I think doing things like that initially might give clients a bit of confidence and understanding of what they might get.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing that I think is really key is obviously when you're looking at how much you can borrow. So this is a topic we get asked a lot as financial advisors. And often it might be for if a case goes to court, you need to show actually how much could I borrow to buy my next property. And both parties often have to do that. But the main thing I say to my clients is don't stretch yourself. Just because a calculator shows you can borrow £300,000 on a mortgage, actually, what do those mortgage payments look like? Because I had a client recently and they were so determined to stay in their house. They were, I really want to stay in the house, really want to stay in the house. And I said, okay, right, let's sit down. Yep, you could afford the mortgage. You could get the mortgage. But then it's like currently you're paying, I don't know, £800. You'll be paying £2,500 for the mortgage. And then like, how does that feel? And how will that impact your lifestyle? And I think once people then realise, I won't be able to go on those nice holidays, or I won't be able to go for drinks with my friend at the weekend without, worrying about money. I think it's weighing up, isn't it? And thinking, actually, would I rather not borrow that much and have money for fun? But I think, it's not just about how much you can borrow. It's like at what expense and what can you actually afford?
Affordability of it. And it's really important. And again, go and speak to brokers and speak to, humans about it. And I also think it's sort of not becoming so obsessed with being in a big house or staying in a big house. It's about your needs. You might have children who no longer live at home or have gone to university and, it might feel important to stay in the house. But actually, if it's unaffordable, you will be better off, perhaps departing from the idea of staying in the house and moving into a smaller house, which would be more affordable.
Yeah. And for me, I try to really get to the why of why someone's really attached to the family house. And I often find that over time, because divorces are never that quick, actually once they become a bit more at peace with the fact that their relationship is ending and kind of a bit more used to thinking about their new life on their own, they become less attached to it. And often the reason they think they want to change is because is because they're scared of the change and scared of the changing things. And especially for children, I think children are so adaptable, they're so resilient, and you can make it exciting for them. You can say to them, we're going to get a new house, you're going to have a new bedroom, you get to choose what we want on your walls. But I think actually sometimes it's not even the safety that they want the house, it's more just fear.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, you need to look at where you want your life in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And do you actually want to be in a family home, which has perhaps got not very nice memories? Not all of those memories made in the family home are happy ones, particularly as you near the end of your relationship. And actually, it might be quite refreshing for both of you to live in separate houses and create those new memories with the children that isn't associated with the family home. And I think people become so wedded to the family home psychologically and emotionally. And actually, it's about sort of taking a step back and not only thinking about the affordability of remaining in it, but also the emotional side of remaining in it. Are you going to be in the house followed by the ghosts of of your previous relationship, and is it good for the children to be in the family home without two parents as they were used to? Perhaps it's cleaner if the children are, in two separate houses, two new houses, so that they can start making new memories with their parents individually.
And I think as well, like something I said at the beginning, is that you don't have to have all the answers straight away. And I've quite a few people who I've helped, actually, they decided, you know what, I'm going to rent for a year. I'm going to move in family for a year to see how I feel. Because time is such a healer, and with time, it becomes so much clearer what you want. And I think you've got to then find your like new identity as a single person. And actually, when you're mid-divorce, it might not be the best time to make a decision. So I think putting less pressure on yourself and sometimes thinking of a stepping stone rather than, it might even be that you think you're going to buy a property that is not your forever home, but actually you'll be there for a few years.
Yeah.
And then you'll decide where you want to live and what house you want to live in. So I think stop putting pressure on yourself. Just think actually what works for now.
I think people think of that as a step back, and actually that stops a lot of people from kind of exploring different options, but it's not, is it? It's just a reset, a pause, a bit of clarity before you start making those big decisions. But yeah, I do think something I see a lot is after a separation, people feel like they're going backwards rather than forwards, but that's not the case at all. But I wonder if maybe that's why people don't do those things and don't kind of just pause for a minute and think about renting or living with other people, when financially that could be the best thing for them. So yeah, that's quite an interesting.
I think people become focused on the house, and often it is the biggest asset. But if there are other assets to think about, for example, a pension, I think people become focused on the house. But actually, it might be financially more beneficial to think about the other assets and whether perhaps taking or sharing a pension rather than the home, might be better for them in the future. It's not just about the house, it's about what else is there. And actually, letting go of the house, you might be in a better position because it might allow you to have a bigger share perhaps of the other assets available, like the pension, which might land you in better stead.
And I think so many people are quick to ignore pensions, and mostly because people don't understand them and the value that they give. And I think I see clients all the time and they say, actually, I'm not bothered about the pension. I just want the house. And then the question I often ask them is like, okay, how do you feel? Let's fast forward some time here. You've just retired. You're managing on the state pension, say £1,000 a month to pay your bills and live. And your ex is swanning around the world on a jet, having these lovely holidays because they've got this nice big pension. Yeah. So I think that makes them kind of reevaluate. And I think so many people going through separation are so focused on the here and now, they forget about the future.
100%.
And I think actually a lot of our job is like educating people financially and helping them understand actually how does that pension work, and actually try to make them think of the long-term planning as well as just the here and now. But pensions, they have so much value. And, if you retire at 65, you could potentially have, 30 years where you're still living and wanting money to enjoy yourself. You've worked all your life. So yeah, it's a big mistake kind of just thinking I'm not going to focus on the pension. But yeah, I think like we both work with people going through all different life transitions and not just separation. And a lot of what we do, like I said, is either financial education or helping people become more kind of financially confident. So what do you normally do to help people become more financially confident?
I think, so we've got a tool like cash flow forecasting, which I've used as well in kind of the divorce space and alongside solicitors. And it's just quite a nice way for clients to visualize the different options. So like we were saying, I could do this, I could rent, I could buy a bigger house, or I could downsize. So we use cash flow forecasting to kind of make that visible, would you say, to clients? So they can see what their options are, but actually the longevity of them as well, and what that looks like in retirement, what that looks like now, what the bigger mortgage that impact would have, and different scenarios like through the divorce process as well. So if they're not, thinking about the pension, us being able to demonstrate along the way, actually if we take this into consideration, sometimes I'd say that kind of gives them a bit of clarity. I don't know, have you had experience with that kind of along the process?
I think we always say to our clients at the outset, it's important to have a team, like you said at the beginning, and it's not just a solicitor, it's a financial planner or financial advisor. It's also a divorce coach, someone who can help you on the emotional side of things. And I think having that team from the outset can really help, because in terms of cost proportionality, we aren't trained in therapy. So spending money with us, to listen to you and your emotions is obviously part of the job, but it might be better that we signpost. And in terms of finances and where you want to be with your finances in the future, there's a limit to how much we can advise upon. So we signpost our clients to financial advisors like you. And having that team from the outset can make the process easier. And there's going to be stages along the way where there are going to be options presented to the client. We could do this. This is an option. He might say this. You could say this. We could suggest this. They might come back with this. And having those options available and understanding what that might look like for your finances in the future really helps, because it means you can make a decision based, on proper advice and a knowledge base, so that you can make the decision having that sort of arsenal of knowledge available to you, so that you know that you're making the right choice. Having looked at a cash flow, knowing what your income might be, knowing what your ISAs and shares might be, or your pension might be worth further down the line. All of that really helps it helps you make that decision.
I think having the cash flow planning, I think in negotiation is so key. I think if you're given an offer by your, ex-husband, this is what they're offering you. Actually, it's one thing looking at the paper, oh yeah, that sounds good. That sounds enough. But actually, does it work? And I think putting something into the cash flow planning system, what it does is it shows, this is Jodie now, age 37, she's likely to live till, we normally say 100 just in case, because we don't need to run out of money. And then if she's given X amount of cash, this proportion of, towards a property, this portion of the pension, what does that look like? And does that give me enough money to actually live pre-retirement and in retirement? So I think it's actually testing it. And, if we then do that, then send it back to you and you say, actually, do you know what, it could work. Or if it doesn't work, it then helps you negotiate with, actually, that doesn't work for my client.
Exactly.
So I think it's that really kind of being able to have solid evidence rather than just saying, I want this, I want that. And I think I see that quite a lot. People, I'm entitled to that, I'm entitled to that. It's like, right, actually, a lot of divorce cases are based on what the needs are.
Exactly. You've, again, hit the nail on the head. It really is about needs. I think people come into the process thinking, I want this. And, again, with that anger or that jealousy or that bitterness, I want this. But actually, it's about needs. And we need to work out with you what your needs are, your housing need, how big a house do you need, your income need, how much money do you need to live the life that you want. And that's really the focus. So working with a solicitor and a financial advisor really will help you make those decisions and give you the confidence to know that you're making the right one.
Yeah. And back to the confidence piece, I think having confidence is just understanding your position. Like, you don't need to be a financial expert. You just need to take time to understand your own money. I've had some really, and this is why I love doing what I do, like helping people through the divorces, is I've had a client fairly recently, they came to me and they literally had no control of money for she was retiring, so for 30 odd years, no control of anything, really didn't understand it and was really vulnerable when I first met her. And I saw her the other day for our 2-year review. And it's so nice because she's now in her house, which she's now got on her own, it's a little flat. She's so happy she's there. She's got her spreadsheets of her outgoings. She understands her money, and it's just, you just see them feel so much lighter and happier.
The empowerment.
And that light at the end of the tunnel. I know it feels horrible and scary and overwhelming at the beginning, but actually, once you've got through that, it's as long as you've, done it in the right way and you've settled it, something that's going to suit you. I think it can be so rewarding, empowering to feel like you're actually managing on your own. And it's so rewarding, isn't it, for us seeing actually the other side of it, the exciting bit.
It is lovely, the start and then the end. But I also think going back to what you were saying with it being a group, having a group around you and a network, I've now got a book of people that I would use for different things. There's so many times where I've almost been the therapist or the mediator. I'm like, no, that's not my realm. So as much as we kind of liaise with solicitors throughout the process, I'm also now saying, do you think we should get a mediator in, or is there this person, who could help with this? I don't know whether you have that as well, Jodie, but that's
I think
been
divorce
so
coaches
good.
are really good. And I think a lot of them do a lot of online content or podcasts as well. And there's so many free resources out there. Like Stowe are amazing with their free resources. Like they've got podcasts, they've got how-to guides, and there is a lot of, information out there. I think it's just making sure that you're listening to qualified people, because the danger is social media these days, anyone can get, behind a TikTok and tell you something. So it's actually if you're listening to anything, making sure that they're qualified people who know what they're talking about.
That's exactly it. I mean, we often get clients who look at, Mumsnet or Reddit and, get their information on there. And that's just the worst thing to do. It becomes completely overwhelming, and often it's wrong. It's just factually, legally incorrect. So, it's great that there is so much free information, and Stowe have a whole wealth of free guides and information on our website and free podcasts. But if you are looking for information, it's important that you do go to the qualified right people. And we offer initial talks with clients free of charge. So it doesn't have to cost you money to get this information. There are lots of free things available. Just need to make sure that you're looking at the right thing.
Yeah, I think, I guess financially, putting that aside, is there anything else that no one really warned you about separation, or like things that people should think about? Because finance, I think, is one thing, but there's probably so many other elements that are either putting people off or causing anxiety.
Yeah, I think life will change. For me, I'm like, actually, it's changed so much for the better. I think you will, I lost friends. And I think a lot of people I speak to, their friendship dynamic changes a little bit. It might be that you've got joint friends that you expected to be there for you, but actually they don't show up how you expect them to. But I think also it really makes you realise who really is there, who your real true friends are. I think when you're going through it, before I did it, I was so worried about what people thought. No one enters a marriage and thinks they're going to be divorced. No one wants to be a divorcee. It's like, it's a
stigma.
It is, isn't it? And I think actually, for me, I became to realise, I was like, actually, who am I trying to make happy here? Who am I trying to make happy? Because I'm not happy. He's not happy. We're in the same marriage. And I think sometimes you think of everybody, but then when you try to think of the individual people you actually care about, you think, actually, who am I doing this for? And as long as you're people the closest to you, they're going to care about the people who really are there and love you, is your happiness. So when you do tell the people close to you, they are going to be, great support if they are true friends and good people in your life. So I think it is, that that does change, because I didn't anticipate that. There is a lot of guilt. You do feel lonely, at times. I think going from, even if you've got the wrong person with you, actually having somebody there every evening to suddenly not, it's a big change. But that loneliness goes with time. I think at first it feels a bit strange, but then over time you get used to it. And I think the happier you become, the more comfortable you are in your own company. And for me now, I'm on my own now still, but the odd moment I might have and I think, oh, actually, it'd be nice to have someone. I think, do you know what? But I'd rather be on my own than the wrong person in my house. So I think it's that whole grass isn't always greener type thing. And when you look at the relationships around you as well, quite a few of them I probably wouldn't choose to be in. And also the fact that you almost have to rebuild yourself. When you're part of a couple, that's your identity, isn't it? It's that's your little duo. Whereas when you're on your own, you're suddenly oh, it's just me now. But I see that as exciting, because I'm actually, who do I want to be? Where do I want to spend my time? What do I want life to be like? And I think it's such a powerful thing if you can learn to be happy on your own. I think it's really, for me, I find it really empowering. I'm I don't need to rely on anybody financially, emotionally. I'm happy on my own and my decisions are my own.
Yeah, and I think as well, I always say to people, and it used to be my mantra was, you don't know when the last time you're going to be single is again. So enjoy the time where you have it, because the next person you meet you might end up with them forever, because they might just be your person. But while you've got that time on your own, make the most of it. And I think see your friends, because that all becomes harder. It just does.
Yeah, fitting another person into your life, suddenly you're going to have less time to do them other fun things. But What do you think?
I think, I mean, to go back to your question, what do people not expect about the separation? I think what people don't expect in terms of the sort of legal process is that it can take quite a long time. And I think it's important for people to know that, it's not always a quick fix. And if we do end up in court, there are delays, there can be delays. There are, weeks whereby we're waiting for a court date. And I think that needs to be taken into account. And that's not to put people off going through the process. What I mean is that, you need to bear that in mind when we're going through the process, is that it's not just the finances and the expense that it can cost to separate, but also the length of time that it might take and the emotional impact that it will inevitably have on you, and to be prepared for that. And it might be, I think people go in with, I want to take him to court and I'm going to take him to the cleaners in court. Actually, there are ways of settling without going to court. And it's important to kind of bear that in mind, that there are other routes and we need to explore all of them. And if court is necessary, then court is necessary. But it's about having that knowledge before you go into it, thinking this might be quite emotionally draining. And we are there to support you and the team is there to support. But you have to realise that it's not going to necessarily be a quick fix. And it might take a couple of months or even a couple of years. And it's to bear that in mind.
And I think as well, I see a lot of that. People come in and they want the end date and we can't give them that. But there's also the bit, like you had touched on, Jodie, with the guilt element, especially when there's children involved, and people, especially the women, I think, try and stay in relationships because they feel guilty because there's children. But I always try and talk about, they're not getting the happiest version of you. That's such a big thing as well. And actually, setting an example for the kind of relationship they're looking at. Is this the dynamic that you should be?
It's the whole two happy homes are better than one.
Exactly.
What I love now is I've got my home with my two boys, and when I walk in, there's no tension. There's no you're not walking on eggshells. And I think for me, what clicked, what you put the nail on the head there, was actually I want an example of a relationship to be full of love. And I know obviously everyone has their ups and downs, and I would rather show them that if you're unhappy, you make a change rather than you stay put. Yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of times people think it's the right thing to stay together for the children. But as we all know as adults, imagine if your parents told you we stayed together for you. I'd be thinking, gosh, I'd rather you didn't. I'd rather you've just gone and done what's right for you.
Yeah, because that makes them feel guilty as well. They might feel a sense of guilt that, oh gosh, mum and dad only stayed together because of me, and actually they weren't happy. So much better to have two separate homes where you're both individually happy rather than together.
I've actually had a client say that to me before. She said I was always brought up to believe that I just stay put. So that's why I've been here for the last 30 years. And I think that's 30 years of your life that you've believed you've had to. It's so sad.
A prison sentence. I think
really
it's also quite an old-fashioned, I think the times are changing, right? A lot more people don't get married, a lot more marriages end. And I think actually sometimes it's generational. It's actually younger people realise actually you don't have to stay a bit more.
Quite nice to talk about it and to normalise it, and people not have that stigma like you were saying, oh, no one wants to be the, having been through a divorce. But actually, if we're just talking about it and it becomes more of a normal thing.
I love meeting people who've been divorced now. I'm oh, you're in the club?
Yeah, join.
We were going to share some kind of just quick kind of words of wisdom for people. So I've got a few that I've thought about before, but one of them is the solicitor and finance meeting is nowhere near as scary as you anticipate. I think so many people get really nervous before they speak to me. We're not scary, and you can come into that meeting with nothing. Ideally you'd have some preparation, but we're not scary. It's not, you don't have to be worried about that meeting. Pensions shouldn't be ignored. You don't need all the answers. As we've said a few times, it's baby steps. I think people underestimate how strong they are. So you actually get the ball rolling. You can do it with the right support network. Asking questions is a strength. I think ask questions. Don't, no question's a silly question. And then the final one I was going to share is just take your time, breathe, take time. But have you got any to add?
I was going to say, I think going back to the first meeting with the solicitor, we don't judge.
We've seen all sorts.
There really is no judgment, and it's really important to be honest with your solicitor. That's the other thing. I think I see clients and I feel like they want to say things, but they they don't want to. It's so much better if everything is out on the open initially and throughout the process. And as I say, we don't judge. We have seen it all before, most things before. And even if we haven't, it's a no judgment space. So I think it's important to try to feel as comfortable with your solicitor as possible and not to be frightened. We're here to help you. We're not judging. We're not trying to make you feel guilty. We're not trying to, punish you or anything like that. We're on your side and we want to get you through onto the other side. And the way to do that is to be open and honest and lay all of your cards on the table initially so that we can give you the best advice possible.
Yeah, and I think as well, I would add, utilize the people around you. So I think sometimes people don't feel like they can just pick up the phone and ask a question. But one of the clients that I've been supporting through her divorce, we meet sometimes 2-3 times a month, because things are cropping up or there's been quite a lot of back and forth. So it's very much use me as much as you need me in this process. And I think people feel guilty about doing that or don't know they can do that. But I would say utilize everyone around you and the professionals especially.
Don't bury your head in the sand.
Yeah, yeah. One of the listeners' questions, should I go for it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so it was, what are the options for splitting pensions? It's quite a big question 'cause, pensions are a big topic, but...
So there's a few different options. So one of them is that you split the pension. So you'll get especially if there's big pensions, you can get an actuary whose job is to literally really analytical, to study the pensions inside and out and write a report on how it's fair to split them. So that's where you would receive, or your partner would receive, a share of the pension, which is then put into your own pension, or you can join their scheme later on. The other option is offsetting the pension against other assets. So it might be that, there's a £500,000 equity in a house, £500,000 pension. Just to make it really easy, you agree 50-50. One keeps the pension, one keeps the property. So it offsets it against other assets. And then the other one is earmarking it. I don't see it as much, but kind of they keep the pension in that person's name, but once you retire, you actually get a portion of that. Ideally, it's nice to have a clean break and actually be able to separate finances so that you can both go your separate way and not later on have to come back to share any assets. But I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, what I would say is, when pensions are of a significant value, the guideline is when they're over 100,000, getting an actuary to write the report that Jodie mentioned is really important, because pensions aren't just cash in bank. It's like comparing apples and oranges, and each pension is different to another person's pension. So it's really important to get an actuary involved to write that report, to do the relevant calculations and set out what the options are. And Jodie, went through the options. And, sometimes when pensions are shared, the aim of the game is to ensure you have equality of income upon retirement. So when you reach that age of retirement, how much will you both be receiving? So having that report initially done will help you understand those figures and those calculations.
I always think they're a bit like gold dust as well, because if it's once it's there in black and white, it's one thing not to have to
yeah,
about.
Exactly.
So there's this report says this makes it fair. And then I know often when it goes to court, the judge just says, right, let's go along with that pension report because they're the expert. Exactly. So I think people, I meet clients who they I don't want to pay for an actuary to sort the pensions out, or we don't want to do that. And I think, there's so much value in doing that, because you really know then that is a fair solution.
Exactly. And they're complex pensions, and us solicitors, don't have the expertise. And so you need an actuary who is, qualified in pensions to really analytically go into each pension that you might hold and work out the benefits, the risks and the value of it, and do that comparing, contrasting exercise for us, putting it into a nice report from which we can negotiate upon.
Mm.
So next question. So my partner deals with all finances. I want to separate. What do I do?
Okay, I get this a lot. Actually, most women that come to me, that is their scenario. And I think they feel embarrassed by it. They always say, I'm really sorry, I don't know, and now I don't know what I'm doing. And it's just so the first thing is just remove that, don't feel embarrassed, because actually a lot of the time they might have been raising the children, or they were doing something else. It's kind of, everyone has their own role in the household, doesn't it? So no one needs to feel embarrassed about the fact that they don't know. I think we we just take baby steps. So it's like I kind of gave the example earlier, and let's get the property valued. Let's see what the mortgage balance is, and maybe using a financial advisor, planner, a professional to kind of give you the steps and just go from there, because it can feel really overwhelming. And they always say, what do I do? I'm like, breathe. It's okay. Let's start from scratch. And that's all it is. It's just data gathering, isn't it? Okay, we've got a bit there and a bit there. Take our time. The divorce process takes time. Let's just get our head around it. And yeah, that's a good place to start.
And when I work with clients, I do it as like a 3-step process if they're going through divorce. So the first meeting will be, let's just gather the information and understand where you are. So and it might be across more than one meeting, but that's the first stage, understanding. And the second stage is the negotiation. So that's when we're actually, got offers on the table, like, what works. And then the final stage is always the nice bit. It's once everything's been agreed, us then planning their new life and actually putting a plan in place. Like, what are we actually going to do now? But yeah, I think people who haven't had any say in finances, that's not uncommon. Don't be embarrassed, and just take baby steps to understand what there is.
Yeah. So I think it's the last question, possibly. What if my partner earns all the money?
So this is really common as well. And I think a lot of the time, say, for example, I'm only saying this because it's more common, husband earns a really good salary. They've got a really big pension. They've got more assets, and wife, works part-time or perhaps doesn't work. The wife will feel like these marital assets belong to him. But I think the key is once you're entering a marriage, you're pretty much signing a contract to say what's yours is theirs and vice versa. And I think the big reminder is actually the reason that they've been able to go out and earn this big salary and accumulate these big pensions is because 9 times out of 10, like, they've been at home looking after the house or looking after the children. And that's the way they built their marriage. And without you, they wouldn't have been able to do that. So they are your joint assets. They're not just, his pension, her pension, his house, her house. It's these assets are your joint marital assets. And that's something to really get your head around. And I think when there is one person earning a lot more, when it does come to settlement, that comes into consideration a lot, because actually that person will be able to afford a bigger mortgage to go and live on their own. And it might mean that the other person actually needs more of the house equity because they can't afford to borrow as much. And how I've seen divorces conclude is that you're both in kind of as much equal positions as you can be at the end of it. It's not that one person's, they're loving life, got a big house, got loads of money coming in and can live lavishly, and then the other person's, got nothing. So the court and the legal system does look at things becoming fair. And just because one person earns more definitely doesn't mean that they're entitled to more.
100%. And I think that's really important to know, is that a home provider, often the wife is seen as equal to the financial provider. So their roles are not, well, he earned everything and I didn't do anything, I just looked after the children. It's now, trite law that those roles are considered equal. So just because he has always earned the money and paid for everything and you've just looked after the children, it doesn't mean anything. Those roles are seen as equal, and that's reflected in the agreements.
So we always end on sharing a top tip. So my top tip was just going to be to create a folder like on your computer and just have all your financial bits in there. Like have everything, like data some information, and have your income, your outgoings, latest mortgage statement, and kind of look at it at least annually, just so you know what you've got.
Yeah, I would say mine's probably the priorities and kind of values for yourself, because you have always been a couple and a pair. So maybe start thinking about what are your priorities post-separation? What are your values? What do you want life to look like? And yeah, kind of separate to the financial stuff, but still super important.
Any top tips to leave us with?
Speak to a solicitor.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that you get an understanding of the process and the costs, and how it all works as soon as possible. And whether that's a 10-minute chat or a full hour meeting or 2-hour meeting, just having that initial chat with a solicitor will land you in good stead.
Anything else?
That's it from me. Anything from you?
No, that's it from me. Thank you, Rebecca, for joining
us. Yeah,
us.
thank you. It's been so nice having you on. It's been very helpful, and hopefully it's helped lots of people out there. But Yeah, thank you for listening. Yeah, send the podcast to anyone it may help. Send us your questions as always. But yeah, thank you for listening.